Hello, this is Life Stories. My name is Justine, your host, and I warmly welcome you to the show. Previously, we featured different people that witnessed or were victims of the Northern Uganda war that involved the Lord's Resistance Army and the Uganda People's Defense Force. We featured the former child soldiers, the former child rebel wives, Kony's advisors, and all the things that took place in that part of the country. Very sad indeed. But it's just courteous that we involve the government soldiers too. Yes, they were soldiers and they went to fight for peace, but they too have stories to tell. So today on the show, we engage Afande Felix Kulaije, the spokesperson of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, who will be giving us the government side of this story. But also, you the fan and the viewer of Life Story is well represented because we're going to have fans and viewers share what they think about the Northern Uganda war. Welcome, welcome. The Lord's Resistance Army, LRA war, saw the government soldiers follow suit as victims. In the relentless hunt for Joseph Kony and his rebel group, the UPDF soldiers went to the darkest and remotest places, uncertain but nonetheless bold and courageous for the sake of peace. What most people don't know is that, like the civilians, they too were affected, both emotionally and physically. Many lost their lives, and their families and friends are still living with the scars. So, Afande, tell me about the Lord's Resistance Army War. When did this war start?
Quite a very good question, because there have been distortions about the start of the war, the causes of the war, and those who have been loudest, unfortunately, were from the other side of government, or the opposition, as people want to call themselves, and therefore misrepresented facts. This war started on the 23rd of August, 1986. Just 1 month and a few weeks after the capture of Bibia, which was the last point on the Uganda-Sudan border, because that was on the 29th of June, the same year. So those who have been alleging that the war was because of negligence or neglect of Northern Uganda, then the question would be, who neglected Northern Uganda? Was it the NRM government or the previous governments? And it was started by the former UNRA soldiers who had fled into Sudan, were rearmed by Khartoum, contrary to international law, and the war began with the formation of UPDM, UPDA. UPDM had the political leaders like the late Otemari Madi, Charles Alai, and others. UPDA had military commanders like Brigadier Donglatek, the late was V. Okello, Angelo Okello, Eric Odwal, the people who had been senior officers in ULA. And what has been unrecorded, and this is the interviews I've had with those who were UNLA officers then, was that when they saw the size of the people who entered Kitgum town, they were shot. Some were shot because they were child soldiers, Kadogos, as we were calling them then. The others were shot because they are from the Rwenzori Mountains. And so, traditionally, in this country, it was believed a soldier must be 6 feet tall, a chest 15 feet wide. Now, to see these small men and boys chasing them was unacceptable. So they said, we must push them back. So the first cause of the war was this belief that short people can chase away the mighty soldier or militant tribes. The other, of course, was fear for the unknown. They had been in the government. They have gone to exile. What will happen next? Third, loss for jobs. For the historical stereotype, the North versus the South. Southerners have come, they are going to finish all of us. So we must defend ourselves before even anything was done by our side. 5 was what had happened in Luwero, because UNLA had committed atrocities in Luero. They thought we were going to avenge what had happened in Luero. And then 6, when they finally attacked, probably they would have been defeated in the first months or the first weeks. But one of our units, 35th Battalion, based in Namukora, was attacked, and the population actually hid information from them. So out of anger, 35th Battalion unleashed anger on the population and killed civilians in Namukora. So as a result, they said, "How you see what we're telling you?" That's what actually has brought them. But yet, the cause in the first instance was because the population had hidden the attackers.
Joseph Kony was born in an area called Odek in the south of Gulu district. In 1987, at the age of 26, he joined a rebel group called UPDA. It is out of the UPDA that Alice Awuma Lakwena's Holy Spirit movement arose. This movement started with the so-called mysterious powers of her father, Sovereign Lukoya, a notorious rebel witch doctor. Lukoya claimed to have been possessed by 71 spirits and given control of heaven and earth. Lukoya's daughter, Alice Awuma, was a fishmonger in the town of Opit, but she stepped forward with a calling of her own. In the early 1985, Alice reportedly conversed through the spirits for 1 month under the waters of the Nile. From there, she went to the secret hills of Kilak and Awere to complete her initiation. A year later, under the orders of spirits, she reclaimed herself, named Lakwena, which means messenger. With the help of her father, Sovereigno Lukoya, she proceeded to form the Holy Spirit Movement, a ragtag rebel group with intention of overthrowing the NRM government. Alice Lakwena was defeated by the NRA forces, now UPDF, in the area of Busoga and ran into exile in Kenya. With his daughter in exile, Lukoya stepped in to fill the gap. Lukoya's tenure was, however, short-lived, and he returned to Gulu a short while later. After the defeat of Lakwena and Lukoya, the baton was picked up by her 25-year-old cousin, Joseph Kony. He emerged as the final member of Uganda's despicable trio of evil.
LRA was chapter 3 of the rebellion. Chapter 1 was UPDA. In fact, chapter 4. Chapter 1 was UPDA, which signed an agreement with the government in 1988. Chapter 2 was Alice Lakwena, who was a cousin to Joseph Kony, the Holy Spirit movement, as she called herself. Chapter 3 was her own father, Sovereigno Lukoya, who inherited from Alice the survivors of her fighters. And it did not last long, then her cousin Joseph Kony emerges with the Lord Resistance Army. So you can see the triple, the unholy trinity, if I may call it. You have Alice Lakwena with the Holy Spirit movement, her father, and then the son, Joseph Kony. That's the unholy triple, or the unholy trinity, that completed the genesis of the conflict in northern Uganda and has seen it up to date.
Kony then formed a guerrilla force called the Lord's Resistance Army. Between 1987 and 1994, he led a low-intensity conflict which had relative support of the population. He claimed he had a non-political agenda of leading Uganda while implementing the 10 Commandments.
Now, at the beginning, 1989, 1990, the population volunteered fighters. One particular assembly I cannot forget was at Atanga sub-county headquarters. It's in Padeo district now. When one of Kony's commanders, called Amone, sat at the flagpole of the sub-county headquarters to receive young people being brought by their own parents to fight these invaders from the south. So it was a war seen to be as a natural war against the invading southerners. And indeed, it received support locally. It received support politically from those who were politically conscious. It received support from the actual diaspora.
When he lost the support of the people, Joseph Kony started massacring people in villages, burning homes, abducting children, girls, and mutilating civilians, doing all this to the very people he claimed he was apparently fighting for. In his carefully crafted strategy, Joseph Kony intended to create a sense of hopelessness, despair, and hatred for the NRM government.
Kony claimed he was fighting for their cause. He began committing atrocities against the population, cutting their ears, cutting their noses, cutting lips, as early as 1991. So then the people can't say, but this man says he's fighting for us. Why is he doing this to our people? There's a particular couple, actually there are three, a man with his wives that I met in Pabo. These two ladies lost their ears in 1991. A group of 40 of them were gathered by LRA and mutilated. So, that way, the population began shifting away from him. But it was not as large scale until February 25th, 1995, when Vincent Oti, now late, went to his own home area in Atiak, gathered people, over 300 of them, including students from Atiak Technical College. And they simply unleashed terror on them. By the time the guns and the bayonets went silent, 250 people lay dead. This appalled the actual community. Said, this is not for us, this is against us.
When the NRA, now UPDF, intensified its fight against the Lord's Resistance Army, killing hundreds of its fighters, Kony's ability to wage war was severely reduced, and he requested the government for peace talks. The then Minister for Pacification of the North, Betty Bigombe, requested and got support from the President to pursue negotiations with the LRA rebel group, which ended in vain.
By 1994, Kony had been pushed to the wall. So he offered for peace talks. He requested for peace talks, which Honorable Betty Bigombe, now minister again, was Minister for Northern Uganda. She was appointed to lead the government delegation. And they used to meet in a place called Pajule, north of the trading center called Pajule, where I think she was subjected to a number of inhumanities. Searched. You imagine a lady being searched by men to almost nothing. Then Kony was talking behind shades and dreadlocks, so that is not recognized. And the peace talks only were abandoned when somebody came around telling them Kony has ordered that he should be killed. Talks ended there. Why? During the talks, he sent emissaries to Khartoum, and Khartoum offered him help. So once he received the help from Khartoum, he saw no reason to continue the talks. War resumed again. So that's why from 94 onwards, the scale of the atrocities grows bigger. It's no longer an Acholi war, it's now a Khartoum war.
Afande Felix, did you ever see Joseph Kony?
I saw him during the peace talks.
Face to face?
Face to face, twice.
Did you ever try to come to a neutral point and find out why this man is behaving the way he was?
There was an attempt, like I said, in 1994, by our seniors to say, this is an opportunity. What do you want? That's the purpose of the peace talks. Because peace talks for conflict resolution are target getting from the parties to the conflict why they are fighting. So this was an opportunity to ask Joseph Kony, what is your agenda? And I regret to tell you, that time he had none. He only wanted to capture Kampala and rule the country.
Yes, they were soldiers and ready for guns and bombs as a way of life. But what they went through for the sake of peace was heroic, to say the least. What was the biggest challenge for the Uganda People's Defense Force or the government side in this war?
None is in isolation. It's a combination. But the major ones were, of course, the historical distortion I mentioned, North versus South divide. These are Southerners, they have come to finish us. They have come to revenge. Two, the budget. This is the only country that operated a peacetime budget in executing a war. The donors insisted the ceiling to be spent on defense was 1.8% of our GDP. Now, what did that do? It reduced us to working like the rebels. They are working, we are working. They are using SMG, we are working using SMG. Later they get support from Sudan, we are not against support from anywhere else. Indeed, there are weapons they introduced that we had never seen before, which they got from Khartoum. Third factor was a lack of support on our side from there. Very few supported us, majority sided with the rebels. And especially the political leaders. And indeed, until the war was over, the majority of people elected in Northern Uganda were those against government. Thirdly or fourthly, the other challenge was our own weakness. Because from the word go, we were met with resistance from various groups. We did not have time to train. So many of us who had come from the bush with no training at all, so to speak of, in a formal military training school, did not get a chance to train.
There was a very big issue of child soldiers, and I find it very disturbing because when I went to interview these children, I thought they would tell me they were probably abducted as teenagers. But I almost lost questions to ask them when they told me that they would be abducted at 6, 7, 8, and they would go to battle and fight. So when you met such children, did you was that a time when you would run away probably and not fight back? How would you handle the issue of child soldiers?
It's a very tricky one. First of all, it's true, the presence of child soldiers in the ranks of LRA did affect our method of fighting. We could not unleash the entire might that we had because we knew they were abducted children turned into fighting machines. And Kony preferred children because they were easy to indoctrinate. 5 years down the road with him, they saw him as their father. So they did whatever he said. 2, he made them kill their own relatives, I'm sure they told you, so they have nowhere to run back to. Or if any of them attempted to run away, the child would be brought and they tell her colleagues or his colleagues to kill him or her. So look at that trauma. They have made you kill your parents and your relatives. You are killing your own colleague. That if you try to escape, this is what happens to you. So they were entirely destroyed as human beings. So whenever they came to meet their fellow UPDF, this was, to them, it was a question of survival. They shot first. And if you are shot first, the first instinct is to fight back. So yes, we shot at them, but because of their presence, we did not use the might we had. Hence, therefore, another reason why they would live on another day. And because of that, we lost some of our commanders who, for example, I can't forget a particular case. One rebel born in the area where I was, a place called War in Agago. I got information that he was around. He was called Lumumba. And ironically, the LC3 chairperson of War was his brother. So I called the guy and I said, I understand Lumumba is around and is your son here. Please advise him to come out. If not, I'll go after him. Do you know how they reacted? The entire crowd just did it. I was startled. So I asked later on, what does that mean? And I was told, you are being told you are not serious with what you are saying. Or what you have said, you don't know it. And indeed, Lumumba was never advised to come out. So I went after him. And as a result, before a week elapsed, that SRC chairperson made sure I was transferred from that area. Yet, this is a man who had been praised on Christmas Day of 2003 that had enabled them to have Christmas in their villages for the first time after 15 years. They were even offering me a wife to marry and land because of that. Now this chairman, a month later, is accusing me of not doing my job.
When you look at how events happened and Kony comes around, he does this and this, takes on children, kills his people, what outlook on life does this give you?
You know, whenever I would be lost about the nature of mankind, about the criminality man can unleash on each other, then I would get reminded of Job chapter 2. Job chapter 2 verse 1 says, when the heavenly beings were gathered, even Satan was there. So I asked myself, if Satan can enter heaven, what about entering people's minds and hearts? It is easy. That would console me. That is possible. But man can be an animal against fellow man. It's so disturbing. What, however, puzzles me, I think in the research that has to be done, one ought to examine how innocent the church was. Church, I'm not talking about a particular, whether Anglican or Catholic, because I'm very sure the Muslim world in northern Uganda is very minimal. It didn't have much influence. Church, Christian church, has questions to answer on their role in this war. I'm not going into details because of my uniform. If I was...
No, but I think it's not unusual for religion to be caught up in wars, even in other countries, because leadership and politics and religion have things that have things that have them entangled.
Cross each other.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think it's not unusual, even when you go into the history of other wars and genocides and civil wars in other countries. Somehow, there's so many questions left for the church or the religious leaders. So I think it's one of those things that had to...
Very right. You're very right. I admire the calmness with which you say it, because for me, I was appalled. Indeed, when you look at the massacres in Europe, when you look at the genocide in Rwanda, you are very right. But it cannot erase that trauma in a Christian's mind. It can't.
The war in northern Uganda has many a people with stories to tell, heartbreaking stories. Everyone, civilian and army, was affected. It serves as a huge lesson that war has never been and never will be the answer to indifference. As it is already, the world is full enough of hurts and missed chances without wars to multiply them. Therefore, we all need to fiercely protect and be guardians of peace.